What's the most fricked up thing someone has told you about themselves after barely getting to know them? This was a patient. Middle-aged guy in short-term nursing home for a hip replacement or something. Him trying to get to know him to figure out what kind of skills he may need to work on in order to return home safely. I ask him, do you cook? He responds, I used to, but then the cops found out. That guy is a legend. Cooking to pay off medical debt. Damn. They could make a show out of that. Poor guy just hustling. Years ago I went on a date with a guy I met via AOL Personals. Within 5 minutes of the date, he told me he was working on a book about speed seduction, and he was so confident he could speed seduce me. He already had a condom on ready for me. I hightailed out of there full speed. I googled him a while back, and turns out he ended up self-publishing the book, and he was so confident he could speed seduce me. He already had a condom on ready for me. Who says stuff like that? Guy sounds like a punchline to a bad joke. Imagine you being listed as one of his success stories. It happened so fast. She was out the door before I even noticed. Chapter 1, Lesson 1, as soon as possible. Tell the woman that you're a seduction specialist and that you intend to use your powers of manipulation to render her helpless to your sexual advances. This should put her at ease, knowing that she's in the presence of a strict professional. It will also excite and flatter her when she realizes that she's on a date with someone who has his pick of any vagina that he wants, but chooses her vagina. Now you're ready to choose her drink order. She said that if I wanted she would kill her parents so we can live at her house. I never went on a second date with her. Well, at least you know there's a crazy woman out there that's willing to kill her own family for you. That's something, bro. You let a good one get away. Have you seen the housing market lately? This happened to my wife. We had just moved into a new house and the lady next door came over to introduce herself to my wife. As she was talking, she informed my wife that her husband was mad at her because she had farted when he was going down on her. I think I would have a difficult time not busting out laughing if someone told me this and remembering it every time I saw her. OMG. I saw a post on here somewhere asking what you would do if a woman farted while you were going down on her, and the comment I'll never forget was, put my finger in there and whisper, SHHHHH. Little fella. Yeah, next. This sounds like one of my mom's friends. She just told her a story yesterday about how she does her pants right as she was leaving for work and had to call in sick for work. Edit. Originally my mom wasn't going to tell me about this, and my dad had to convince her that I wanted to hear it. I did not, and I was trying to eat some food at the time. I was doing a service call at a house and just making small talk when the owner mentioned out of the blue that she's married to her uncle. I've been there twice, and both times they felt the need to tell me. It's kinda weird. Was it an official announcement? Like I'm required by the state of Alabama to inform you? Doesn't that make her dad's sister-in-law? I can only assume they're very proud of their incestuous marriage. Maybe telling strangers about it helps spice things up. I was a teenager working retail and there was a fidgety older woman I worked with. I was always very nice to her, but she was just a cowwalker at the end of the day. One day she told me about her grandpa molesting her when she was young. Her parents didn't believe her, so it continued until he died. She said she was glad he died and was happy at his funeral. I really had no clue what to say since this was out of nowhere. I just said I was really sorry it had happened. Felt really bad for her because I could tell it still really bothered her. As a parent, I cannot imagine dismissing my daughters if they came to me with that or anything like it. That's fucking unthinkable. I imagine that the pain and the memory lasts a lifetime for most victims. At work, me, hey new guy, nice to meet you. New guy, yeah you too. Check out this picture of a dude in a coffin. That's my nephew. He was killed in a drive-by last month. Me, lem show you where the coffee maker is. Who the truck starts a conversation like that? You just sat down. I went with my dad to do an estimate for some work on a house. When I met the owners I literally only said hi. Your house is gorgeous. and the wife went into full detail on how he bought it the year before because their 15-year-old daughter was attacked and unconsensual intercourse. She ended up pregnant from it. They were super religious and convinced her to keep the baby. They pulled her out of school for a year. While she was pregnant, they bought the new house in a new school district so she could go finish high school without having to face her former classmates. They were now raising the baby as her younger brother. I was pretty much speechless. What do you even say to that? That he broke in and beat the poop out of a guy who unconsensual intercoursed his daughter, put the guy in the hospital with a baseball bat. I totally get why he did it, but I have no idea why he thought it was a good story to tell a new coworker. I have no idea why he thought it was a good story to tell a new coworker. He took one look at you and was like, this looks like a guy who would unconsensual intercourse my daughter. It better not let him get any ideas. I was buying a knack at Home Depot during Black Friday sales. There were none on the shelf, so an employee was helping me get the display model. He carried it all the way to the cashier for me. I thanked him and wished him a happy holiday season. A shadow crossed his face and he looked me straight in the eye and told me he killed someone a year ago during the holidays. He ran a man over and killed him. It was ruled an accident, but he said he won't ever celebrate a holiday again because of that. Edit to add more info and answer a couple questions. I thought the employee was ducking with me as well. I did some searching online when I got home and found the news article, and he did indeed hit and kill a man. It was a super raining evening and just starting to get dark. The person killed was heavily intoxicated and veered into the oncoming traffic. That's one way to get out of the work Christmas party. He's probably still racked with guilt and doesn't know how to let it out. I feel sorry for him, considering it was an accident. Lady at work started telling me about land she owned in another state that is not part of America. She then started talking about how every American is a bond to the government, and your SSN is just your bond number. Wealthy people own those bonds and don't you. She started naming off prices of bonds based off people's races and genders. This was all said after I simply asked her what she was doing with her long weekend coming up. Weirdly enough, I had a dude tell me all this unprompted during my first night shift at Dollar General. All I asked was if he wanted his change. Recall any of the price ranges? Like yens, hundreds, thousands, more? I see you met an untreated schizophrenic in the wild. Ah yes, a sovereign citizen. It's like an MLM, but you end up with an eyes audit instead of a garage full of crap. When I was around 10, I lived beside this weird family. The little girl was probably 4 or 5, always clinging to me anytime we were outside. She talked incessantly and always wanted to hang out with me, asking to come into my house. She annoyed me so badly, but she was really sweet and excited about everything. One day she tells me, "Do you ever naked wrestle with your dad?" I told her that's really weird and no, I don't even know what that means. She then tells me she and her dad and brother naked wrestle a lot. Forgive me, but I was 10. I had no idea what the duck I was being told. I still think about that to this day. The guilt eats at me. I wish I had understood more and told someone. I also had a classmate in high school who'd give rides to and from school, so she wouldn't have to make her dad do it. After we graduated, I saw her working at the mall. She then told me her dad used to molest her, and she was finally able to see a therapist and work through it. When someone says these things happen more often than we realize, they're not wrong. I have had years and years of training on signs of this type of abuse, and it will forever break my heart and make me so angry. It's unfathomable. I found child porn on my dad's computer when I was 13. My parents were controlling, so I didn't really know much about intercourse yet. But I realize now that if I told someone else about it, my cousin 5 at the time would never have been molested by him. It's not your fault. There's no reason to be guilty about it. You were just 10. It's awful to see what people can do to their kids though. I remember being in first grade when I asked my friend a similar question about naked wrestling. I had no idea it wasn't normal until I saw the look and response of my friend. Don't feel bad or guilty. I know this is easier said than done. I do not blame the person I spoke to about it. There is no way a child should be expected to understand a situation like that. I had the same around that age. My friend's sister was molested while I was in the house. I didn't see it or hear it, but I knew something was wrong. I was now allowed for about 1 hour to go to the bedroom where the dad was with the girl, and afterwards the girl was crying. I thought she had just gotten a lecture or something. Years later I found that she was molested until she was about 16. Strangely enough, I remember so many details about that day, like I knew it was not normal, so just saying. At that age most kids really just don't think about molestation when they see or hear a strange situation. You are not the only one that missed it. I carry a similar guilt. When I was 5, my friend and I were having a water balloon fight and playing in the sprinklers with some boys from the neighborhood. At one point, I remember one of the older boys around 12 separated my friend and I. He took her into the garage and told me and one other boy to stand watch and not let anyone come in the garage. I had no idea why he was taking her, but I really didn't like being separated, and I kept asking the other boy if I could go get her. I don't remember anything else until later that night she and I were having a sleepover, and she told me what they did. I remember the things she told me the boy said to her to get her to do things to him. At the time, we didn't understand any of it. Just thought it was weird. I had forgotten all about it until I was about 12 years old, and when I realized what had happened to her I felt sick. I wish I would have told someone. I wish I would have just gone in there and stopped him. She had moved away shortly after the incident, and I never heard from her again. I hope she's okay, wherever she is. I had to stay late when I was a manager as one of the female employees' parents were running late. She broke down to me about how she had been sexually abused by her best friend's father and that he had been doing it to her best friend for years. He was in jail after he did it to her as she reported him, and sadly the daughter hated her for turning in her father as she thought it was normal behavior. She had only been working there for a few weeks at this point, and we had probably only worked together a handful of times. So I really didn't know her that well yet, but I think she just needed someone to know she was struggling with it and someone to tell her it wasn't her fault and what he did was wrong. I think it's easier to tell a thing like this to someone you don't know well. I'm good friends with someone now who, at the beginning of our friendship, confided a similar thing to me, and they hadn't told other friends they'd known for much longer. I think there's a bit of safety in the idea that, even if they get rejected by this person, at least they didn't know them well. And it's a hell of a thing to hold on to alone. You know? This guy I'd worked with for a couple days told me he had been meeting older men at a state park and having frick for money. We worked at an upscale deli, hustler out there slinging salami day and night, when your whole work day consists of inserting meat into buns. New roommate told me her current boyfriend got kicked out of college for sexual assault and was under investigation for another case of sexual assault. Wanted my opinion about it within like 2 hours or meeting. Completely disregarded that my opinion was wrong. Everyone keeps saying that, but I don't think any of you understand how complicated this is. Well, after 2 15-minute conversations with my neighbor, he wants to get a surrogate from a developing country so that his child will never be able to find their biological mother. Women in these countries are not listed on birth certificates, either surrogate or egg donor. He asked me if I'd be willing to consider surrogacy. I'm currently pregnant. I am somewhat nervous about this neighbor now, because he has asked a lot of questions about our house and our baby's due date, info on the pregnancy, the plan for the birth, etc. Suffice to say I won't be hanging out in the front garden with a kiddo when they're born. Edit. Holy deuce. Reddit. Apologies. I genuinely didn't realize that this interaction could be read as my neighbor being a pedophile. Hes gay, guys, and getting married. Him looking into surrogacy is kind of normal. It's just very odd to bring it up to your pregnant neighbor the way that he did, and his interest in my pregnancy/baby makes me nervous, because some people who want kids can be nuts, and has clearly shown he doesn't have much of a social behavioral filter. So like, yes, he'd be a terrible parent, and is likely a misogynist, but has not a pedo. I feel kind of bad I've painted him in that light. It wasn't my intention at all. Freaking hell. Time to install a security system. Hitchhiking through New Zealand. I got picked up by a semi-driver. Awesome guy. but an hour into the drive, started unloading every bit of personal information he could. How has cheated on his wife, screwed the company out of money, stolen items. It was like I was a priest in a confession booth. When I asked him why he told me all of that, he said it's been eating him up inside for years, and telling me helped get it off of his chest. He said I had no idea who he or anyone he knew was, so it felt like I was the perfect person to unload on. I mean, you can't argue with his logic. You all will probably never see each other again, so has safe from repercussions. Dude got hired at my job, and within the hour, not only was he saying massively homophobic and racist crap, he also told a story about how, at his second job the day before, his coworker got his hand caught in a machine. This dude absolutely delighted in telling us that. Not only did he openly laugh in his face while the dude sat there sobbing in pain with a missing hand, he also kept telling the guy that he was going to be in debt for the rest of his life because no one's going to pay for the accident. His wife is going to leave him. He was going to lose his job, etc. Basically whatever he could say to make this dude's awful day even worse. And he got glee out of it. The second he finished that story I told him to faux and never come back. I was MOD, because what the actual duck? Dude got hired at my job, and within the hour, not only was he saying massively homophobic and racist poop, my friend and I met this guy at a house party in college and decided to leave and go to the bars. We're waiting in line at the bar, just chatting. And he mentioned he lived in this particular neighborhood but all the Negroes live there, so I might move soon. We ditched him quickly after that. MOD. Guy walks into my bar, which is down the street from a hospital. Hair's pretty quiet, so I'm not trying to push for a conversation. Next thing I know, he breaks down crying at the bar. I go to ask if Hair's okay, if I need to call him a cab, etc. He told me his teenage son had just died in the hospital down the street about an hour earlier. I had no idea what to say or how to react. I drive taxi. Most customers are people coming or going to hospital or other medical appointments. It's crazy how much I've heard. Sometimes people have need to tell someone. Just couple weeks ago there was an older lady who had just lost her husband. I try to listen and give compassion. Still don't know how I should react. Good of you to listen. You cared enough to ask. I would say that's not a matter of oversharing. That's someone whose life just poo-pooed and they need help. They were desperate and saw the bar as somewhere they might find solace. Poor guy. Girl at the gym told me she was in an unhappy marriage and never loved her husband, and as soon as the kids finished school she was leaving him. Pretty sure I didn't even know her name. She was OBV hitting on Yul Mayo. Some people seem like Skyrim NPCs GBH. Just telling you their life story for no reason. I had a guy tell me that he and his cousin slept with the same person. Another guy telling me that when his cousin committed suicide, he wanted to drink himself to death. This was a first date. I also had some girl I went to middle school with randomly tell me over Facebook that she lost her virginity to her cousin. WTF is with the cousins. Someone I barely know told me they went to a mental hospital twice because they tried to off themselves. When asked her a few months later, when we became pretty close friends, why she trusted me enough to tell me this when we just met, it's cause she noticed my self-harm scars on my ankle. When I was tying my shoe I didn't think it was visible. Edit. I have a lot of PPL asking if I'm okay. I'm happy to say I'm doing a lot better now, and I'm more than month clean. I stopped counting after a month cause I find it easier. Counting just makes me think about it more. Sorry for spelling errors. I had a guy tell me that he and his cousin slept with the same person. Now they're Eskimo brothers. I also had some girl I went to middle school with randomly tell me over Facebook that she lost her virginity to her cousin. I had a similar event. When I was in 7th grade, this girl in my class told a few of us that she had lost her virginity to her brother. She was quite proud of it. In fact, it was kind of I'm a woman now, and you're all just a bunch of babies, still. Sort of thing. Pretty messed up crap. When I used to work in construction I was on a project with this old guy that told me he was once accused of raping his daughter, but after an investigation was conducted it turned out it was his brother who committed the crime. Way too much information. Had another idiot showing everyone pictures on his phone of him and his stripper wife having a threesome. Can't say I miss the trades. Yep. Had a drywall say, "Hey Mr. Canoe, you want to see some naked pictures of my wife?" Then he rushes out to get them before I could say no thanks. He comes back in all pissed off. They had been on the dashboard of his truck but someone had stolen them. Yesterday I was walking with a friend of a friend after my friend left me. He started telling me benefits of NoFap and his pervertness out of nowhere, like telling me how it had affected him and his life personally. He told me how he masturbated in a train sitting with all his friends in such a way nobody noticed. Then he goes on telling me how he asked his father for help, for which his father asked him to drink buttermilk, because apparently it reduces the addiction. Such a way nobody noticed, in such a way nobody mentioned it. Unrelated to the post, but relevant to your comment. When I was in the 8th grade there was this weird kid who sat next to me, as in we shared a table, and he would blatantly jack off in class every day. He would put his hand in his pocket and go to town. Or when he got brave he would just put his arm down on top of his junk on his lap, not inside the pants. Literally just sat his arm on top and would grind. It was terrible. I awkwardly told my teacher multiple times as all my classmates laughed, because it was an awkward thing but nothing ever got done about it. And this was like 2009 or so. The teacher didn't wanna touch that whole crap show with a 10-foot pole. I think she ended up putting him in a table by himself, but he still beat his meat every day during 5th period. Ryan, if you're reading this, you're a nasty freak. And Mrs. Otto, you need to grow a backbone, so your 8th graders aren't exposed to a softcore porn scene. FFS. We were 17. First year of uni. And I had known the guy for a week or two tops. Out of ducking nowhere, he tells me he had a kink for getting farted in the face by girls. I pissed myself laughing, and we became good friends for a while. Was he into piss too? When I was in rehab, my roommate, who was only 18, told me that she had been stripping and selling herself since she was 11 to get her dope, and that you can connect the dots of the abscess scars on her arm. She'd continually shoot up in a spot till she got an abscess, and then she'd just cut it out of her arm herself. Being an ex-heroin addict myself, abscesses weren't anything new, but the fact that this tiny little 18-year-old girl, she couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds, had 9 abscess scars on just one arm. I just couldn't even wrap my head around that. You hear some of the worst ducking stories ever in rehab, and I've been to 10 during my entire addiction, but this was one of the worst I had ever heard, especially because she was so nice and had such an innocent way about her. It was heartbreaking. An 11-year-old doesn't start dope on her own. There's worse backstory there. That's the level of tough most people can wrap their heads around. Hope you're doing okay.